Welcome to another lore video, and now the dust has settled a bit after update 16 and we've all had some time to understand and inwardly digest the changes. What are the major ones? What are the minor ones? What about all the little changes and quality of life stuff that doesn't always make it into the patch notes? And the usual process that we all go through when we get new stuff. It's very obvious that at least one feature is considered to be a major one, both in the game and in the story: the Scythe. Thargoids have always gathered escape pods where they've found them, but it's never felt like a concerted effort to do it. It's been more like picking them up in passing. But the Scythe has now been recognised in Galnet as representing the stepping up of gathering pods, so it's now confirmed as part of the narrative, with this article confirming that the primary purpose of the Scythe is abduction. Whoever was left on the Decrypting is thought to have been abducted as well. And if you listen to the Decrypting logs, you can hear in the background the predator-like clicking sound that the Scythe makes when it comes for people. And it's creepy as hell. So many of us have wondered if this escalation of abductions is due to all the tissue sampling that we've been doing. Is it some kind of retaliation for that? Or maybe the Thargoids are just trying it for themselves in their own way to try and understand why we do it. But this doesn't appear to be the case. This article here says that Professor Albert Esro, head of Aegis, was contacted months ago about mass disappearances. And although it doesn't say how many months ago, that's likely to be before we had tissue sampling as a war activity, so it's unlikely to be the reason for the creation of the Scythe or what it does. The message is pretty clear though. It's all about abduction, en masse. For whatever reason, Thargoids are making a dedicated effort to capture as many people as they can. They're said to have captured people in their millions already, and the Scythe is their latest weapon. I've posted a link to a video last time, which is a good start when learning how to deal with Scythes, but let's talk through the options. It's another Hunter class ship, like the Glaive, but it's slower and with an obviously different purpose. It's got the frame shift drive reboot missile, like the Glaive, which will knock out your FSD for 60 seconds, a little bit less if you've got fast boot, but still long enough to cause you grief. And it uses a lightning attack if you've got a shield. The biggest threat is to rescue ships, because after firing the reboot missile, it sends out very fast and shielded limpets at you that will break open your cargo hatch and steal escape pods, and they can even take passengers from a mission. When this happens, you're presented with a mini-game, like the mini-games at megaships where you have to seal the hull breaches or release the escape pods for the NPC search and rescue to pick up. Same kind of mini-game as that, where you'll get a chance to recover the people before escaping. You'll rarely get the chance to get them all back, like it'll be 2 out of 5 you can get back or something like that. Recovering escape pods seems to have a higher success rate than recovering passengers. Missing passengers from a mission will get you a fine. I've linked to a couple of videos by Itribio showing how the Scythes take passengers and injured, and you can see them in the video description below. So what if you want to kill the Scythe? Well, it's easier to kill than a Glaive. As I say, it's slower, and also it doesn't fire caustic missiles. But if you kill one, it will explode in a caustic cloud that you should avoid until it dissipates. You can send limpets in there, but keep your ship away. So you could put a few AX multi-cannons on a rescue ship and perhaps a small collector limpet to recover any people after killing the Scythe. And some people are doing this, but it's not my personal choice for 2 reasons. Firstly, the time taken to kill them, however small, is still time you could be jumping to the rescue ship or picking up more people. And secondly, the Scythe can pull you over outside the war zone. Commander Haney reported that he'd been hyperdicted 71 light years from WREGOE. So if you do kill it, beyond the satisfaction of killing it and refining your Scythe killing technique, it doesn't achieve any war progress. Therefore, unless I'm going to kill Scythes specifically, I see them as a delay to be evaded. Don't let it get to the point where they can start cracking open your cargo hatch. Avoid the whole issue and any delay that goes with it. You can outboost them like you can with interceptors. It can't mass lock you when you're jumping, only if you go into supercruise. So there's only the missiles and the hatch breakers to really worry about. Because if you're already boosting away, its guns don't harm you that much. The easiest way is to have 2 ECMs so that you can fire one while the other one is recharging. And then even if the first FSD missile hits you before you can react, nothing else will. The ECM will counter the FSD missile and the hatch breakers so that they don't hit you, and then you just jump away as soon as you can. Practice with 2 ECMs in outside the fire zone of a carrier or a safe station until you get the timing right, and you can keep a cycle going where it's constantly destroying anything the Scythe might throw at you. Point defense will help. They can't destroy the FSD missile, but they will work on the hatch breakers. I've got 2 ECMs and 4 extra ammo point defenses on the Rescue Condor, and just 2 ECMs on the Python. Those are my large and medium rescue ships respectively, and the Scythe gets nothing from either of them. If you want to go Scythe killing, it's not a bad way to clear an alert system, and it's a break from rescues, deliveries or tissue sampling. And what our tissue sampling division, Operation Kleenex, what we're doing is if we haven't got enough samples to clear a system, say we think we have but they only do 94% or something, instead of doing another sampling run, which would be a bit overkill, we'll go and kill a few Scythes instead just to top the system off and clear it. And it's a bit of a break in the action. Salvage is impossible with Scythes around. If you drop into a signal and pick up escape pods, you will be ruthlessly interdicted every few minutes, every time you go back into supercruise. But, on the flip side, we can use that as a tactic to lure them in. I've been using a shieldless hull tank Federal assault ship with 4 azimuth multi-cannons, a couple of point defense, an ECM, and a single escape pod in the hold. Go into any alert system and you'll be interdicted by a Scythe every few minutes in supercruise like clockwork, and just kill them till you run out of ammo. If you want to take a ship with Klepto limpets and pick up all the materials the Scythe drops, you can. They're useful for unlocking azimuth multi-cannons amongst other things. And if you have the Xeno scanner on the same trigger as your weapons, then while you're firing at the Scythe you're also getting a ship scan from it, and that goes into your data store. Thanks to my man Griffith Fontenot for that, and for the heads up about using 2 ECMs. Top tips. I mentioned last time the new Barnacle sites on atmosphere planets that appeared with update 16. These are popping up in various controlled systems, and so far they've only appeared on bodies with atmospheres, so Odyssey only. I dropped in to look at one with Commander Monohive. There it is. So let's come in and have a look at this thing.
Nice.
And it just looks a little bit like the old ones, but updated for Odyssey, doesn't it? There's your very similar looking structures there. But
I mean, to be honest, I've never been to any of the Barnacle sites, so...
Well, they're basically kind of this kind of shape. You'll see a lot of these sort of dome arrangements and things like this, you know, but not, you know, a lot more simple, not in as much detail as this. We don't get these sort of squiggly branches and spikes and these various other bits that purpose unclear.
Okay.
And sometimes there are revenants here, and sometimes there aren't, and I don't know what the criteria is for that either. But we'll find somewhere to land and take the SRV. Unlike the Barnacle sites in Horizons, I get the feeling from these that they look like they're still growing, like they're in development.
Right.
Like these are going to change, they're going to evolve or whatever.
They're fresh, new ones.
They're going to grow into something. Maybe that's the reason why at the moment you can't make any war progress in these systems. They'll grow into, maybe they'll grow into some kind of ground base we have to attack or something like that. I don't know, it'd be cool. Maybe that's just wishful thinking. But
That would be cool though.
and maybe that's why we can't clear them at the moment. Give it a couple of weeks or whatever, and you never know, right?
Right, right.
Well, I shot some organic material there, but I don't know where it went. Or what it was. But yeah, there's new stuff like, I think, some kind of resin and various other bits of materials. Ah, there we go. Mining fragment. You can sell these, but there doesn't seem to be any real advantage in doing so. And there you go, you see a lot more detail than at the Horizons Barnacle sites. I know you haven't seen one, but take my word for it, that's a lot more detail.
Okay.
That's weird from that angle. That looks almost like one of those Cthulhu tentacle things, you know?
I mean, a lot of the design is kind of Lovecraftian, and also what's the other guy?
You're probably
Geiger, something
yeah,
Geiger.
you're thinking of Geiger who did the Alien.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Especially the Thargoid, the crashed motherships, or the quote-unquote crashed motherships.
They were the old motherships, because I mean there seems to be some confusion about this, but I think the general gist is that the motherships that we see crashed on planets, that they've now confirmed that those scavengers are kind of rendering down, right? They're about a third of the size of the Titans. So the motherships that crashed on planets are like old ones from the first Thargoid War, and since then, you know, they've been upgraded to the mothership GT Evo,
Right.
fuel injected Titan, 3 times the size, 10 times the power.
I also like this idea of like them being different species. So you know, I don't think
we
that's
got
gonna be it,
revenants.
but I hope that's part of the idea. If Elite had a single player game where you could play a campaign from the lore, like say for example, the Jamesons, whatever. Let's say just for sake of like hypothesis, like the Jameson campaign.
Sure. Yeah.
Would you download that as a DLC and play it?
Probably. I mean, I don't think that, you know, I think in the last 200 years the Thargoids have changed, so their motherships aren't the same. The interceptors, the old style interceptors may be the same, because the old descriptions that we have for them. Revenants. Look at that.
Offline. Under attack.
Whoa.
Chassis integrity critical.
And that's a Scorpion they're battering. Oof. Kaboomski! They blew up my
Wow.
They blew up my
okay,
Scorpion.
I didn't expect that.
Oh, no.
Okay.
I think it's just me and my ship now, and it's on foot or nothing.
Frameshift drive.
So those Revenants weren't there straight away,
3.
but then they appeared at some point between me landing the ship, getting in the SRV and driving.
So they're
Toward-
spawning.
Maybe
Something is
they
making
weren't
them
visible
spawn.
from the air, but I'd have thought they would be. They normally are.
No, I think something's probably making them spawn. It could be
Orbital
some kind of
flight
activity
engaged.
that you're engaging in.
Just
that might
maybe
be making
landing
them
near
spawn.
there, perhaps as a proximity thing.
Yeah. Or,
You know.
or just like a time thing, right? You spend enough time in that area and they just
Yeah, it
spawn.
could be that. Yeah, fair enough. That could be true as well.
Because maybe just try flying around, see if they show up. Like, if that doesn't do it, maybe you have to engage in some like ground-based thing for them to show up.
I can still go on foot unless they shoot me there as well. Dear. So, yeah. I mean, it doesn't say... I think it's just called Barnacles or whatever in Horizons, and you shoot them and you get meta alloys out of them. Shoot these and you get different things out of them. And... Again, I think probably materials that don't have any use in the game yet, beyond selling them to the rescue ships, but perhaps there could be some future CG, some future community goal to collect the stuff from here. Yeah, okay, so they were hovering around here. When I went in here to have a look at these structures. Let's run the old composition scanner. There you go. Xenological discovery made. Thargoid Barnacle matrix. Discovery made.
Do interceptors show up here ever?
Toughened spear roots. I think they can. Toughened spear roots. Spear?
Interesting. Can you scan anything else?
That's what I'm looking now. I'm just flying around with the composition scanner on, just seeing what it lets me. Alright, so these roots, spikes, whatever, apart from the central root structure here, you can't scan any of those. These kind of tree structure thingies.
Hull integrity compromised.
Oh, wait a minute, I can scan them.
Look like antlers. Weird antlers.
They do look like weird antlers, yeah. Let's try another angle. What? Ah, so you can scan these if you're close enough to them. Coral tree. There you are. It's a coral tree. Whatever that is. I've never heard of a coral tree before. That is not a Thargoid thing of which I am aware.
Coral tree. It's
Coral
interesting
tree. Yeah, so we know this one. This is your... Yeah, toughened spear roots. Alright, well let's have a look at... No, there's no revenants, as you can see. So they must have appeared when I think they'll appear maybe only when you're on foot or in SRV. And as we discussed in that video, the most interesting and worrying part of these sites is that the systems they're in seem to be unable to be cleared. They're Thargoid controlled systems, so killing Thargoids, tissue sampling, salvage, killing revenants when they appear, selling materials from the sites, all of those things have been tried, but none of them are working. The progress bar doesn't move, and the war progress for the system stays at 0. AXI tried to isolate the system you just saw us at there in the Trianguli sector. They cleared all the controlled systems within 10 light years of it to isolate it from reinforcements, and then had a go to see if they could clear it. They couldn't. The systems seem impervious to any attempt to clear them, and that's a worry because, as you can see from this one, even isolated, it's still within 10 light years of 29E Orionis, and so it can keep putting it into alert, and so far there's nothing we can do about it. Is this a bug, or is it deliberate? Do we have to wait for these ground sites to develop a bit more before we can take them on? What are they for, anyway? You don't need an atmosphere planet to grow barnacles for meta-alloys. None of the other barnacle sites needed an atmosphere, so that suggests they have a purpose beyond merely producing meta-alloys. Also the fact that they're called a matrix, which suggests a more complicated structure than a simple barnacle site. Perhaps the Revenants themselves are a clue. They first appeared at Odyssey settlements, but only the military ones. And now here they are again at the Barnacle Matrix sites. Are they overseeing the building of their own military bases after spending a while patrolling ours and learning about them? Is this connected to the human captives? If they are, as some people have speculated, going to reprogram the human captives into a Thargoid-controlled army and send them back at us, then perhaps when these bases, if that's what they are, perhaps when they're complete, fully grown, whatever you want to call it, the captives will be sent to them, ready to conduct further assaults on foot. Maybe that's the plan. We'll be keeping an eye on them, and there's a link to a sheet with all the ones found so far in the video description below, which is being kept going by Lilac Light from Canon, and updated as soon as they get any new reports. As you heard me mention in that section with Commander Monohive, and also if you've watched Burr or any of the weekly news channels, you'll know that there's been a hyperdiction nowhere near where any hyperdictions have happened before, and in an area that has not been of any interest to Thargoids or Guardians, although it is close to the Col 70 sector, which is permit locked and long suspected to be one of the areas that Thargoids come from. Much is being made of the hyperdiction being non-hostile, and this has got everybody wondering why. Outside the war zone, the hyperdictions are as they were before. They shut you down, they scan you, and they fly away, and only attack you if you attack them. I've been hyperdicted hundreds of times that way, doing rescues in the past, and you get used to it. They don't even take offence if you get your shutdown field neutralizer on in time and boost away, and they don't manage to shut you down at all. It doesn't seem to bother them. They don't come chasing after you. Hostile hyperdictions have only happened since the Titans arrived, and only within the war zone. The ones outside the war zone are still the relatively benign ones that we've had for 5 years before the war machine. It's not news that there are non-hostile hyperdictions outside the war zone. It's not news that this happens. So why are they making such a big deal of it now, in Galnet? Well, all sorts of ideas are flying around about this. The idea about different hives or clans or factions or whatever you want to call them, gangs, gets the usual mention, but it can equally be argued that outside the war zone the Thargoids may not simply attack anyone who doesn't attack them first, and you don't need to have different hives to explain that. Timothy Culver, remember him? Member of the Thargoid Advocacy Project, who was interviewed a while ago by Joyce Sen, shortly before the majority of the TAP got killed aboard the Kingfisher. Well, unless they got abducted instead, which also seems possible given recent events. He's saying this non-hostile hyperdiction proves they don't all want to kill us. But as I said, we already know that, and it doesn't help us with the ones who do. He also claims the primary purpose of the Thargoids is to understand us and not fight us. An interesting idea, and again not an original one, but there's not enough information to know either way. And statements like this about things that we already know, they might just be put in because you never know when new players might join. So from time to time we'll get repeats of information like this, refreshers, or it could just be getting repeated now because it's going to link to a new bit of story. I do think Thargoids are not automatically warlike unless you're in their territory. And this brings us nicely onto the next bit of speculation. Now, from all accounts, they were automatically hostile to the Guardians. The difference being that the Guardians appeared in systems where the Thargoids had already seeded barnacles, so they instantly attacked. We did not evolve or expand into systems with Barnacle sites, and so we were left alone until we attacked them or invaded their territory. So that suggests that they are territorial but not automatically aggressive. You leave us alone, we'll leave you alone, just stay out of our space. The war zone hostile ones have established, and the new Barnacle sites do suggest that those areas are now their territory too. So the territorial trait at least seems to be firmly established. Once they've decided something is theirs, that's it. They will ruthlessly attack anyone who enters that space. So what about this latest encounter then? This benign hyperdiction in the middle of nowhere? Well, players went out there, searched the systems around it, and it's led to another 2 Guardian sites with the remains of Thargoid ships there. And that's only the second time we've seen both of those together. The first time was a Proteus site that we found on Salvation's paper trail. Once again, it appears to be hard evidence of the war between the Thargoids and Guardians, outside anything reported second-hand. But is everything what it seems? With all the Guardian sites that have been discovered, well over 100 of them now, in only 2 systems have we found the remains of Thargoid attackers. 2. We may start finding more as time goes by, but that's still a lot of sites without Thargoid wrecks. Perhaps the Thargoids only attacked a few of the Guardian sites and not all of them. Perhaps the Guardians tidied up the Thargoid ships after their battles with them, and these are just the ones who didn't do their house cleaning. This new system and the Proteus system in the Trapezium sector are nowhere near each other, so if there is some kind of pattern, we're going to have to see a few more of these to see what that pattern might be. Plus, unlike the Proteus site, there was a hyperdiction at this one. It might have been a non-hostile one, but there were no active Thargoids at all at the Proteus site. And players are also reporting non-human signal sources in many systems within 30 light years, all of which suggests a Thargoid presence building up that was completely absent from the Proteus site. But why? One theory is they're looking for Salvation the Super Muppet, who's supposed to have uploaded his ego into a Guardian box, and maybe this new site has something to do with that, have the Thargoids got a lead on him. This particular theory has been given even more weight by Commander Clara Bloodwin, who posted 3 Guardian Sentinels in a formation that looks very similar to the logo of our favourite bad guys, Azimuth. Is Salvation controlling them to try and contact Azimuth? And while we didn't know about this site before, Azimuth might have done. With the Proteus site being visited by everybody now, they could be looking in new sectors for somewhere to research in peace. And, of course, if the idea about Salvation is right, they could also be looking for him, and maybe that attracted Thargoid attention. Some other ideas people have had? Maybe the Thargoids are noticing the substantial amount of Guardian-derived technology that we're using, to the point of having to pull out or refit some of their old designs with anti-Guardian fields, and they're also monitoring old Guardian territory more closely, and as a result, they accidentally let us know about a site we hadn't previously found. Maybe the Thargoids are attempting to communicate, deliberately drawing our attention to this place as some kind of message. If there are more than just 2 of these sites, then maybe they will form a pattern of some kind, or lead to the discovery of new information. Remember a while ago when I wondered if the blue triangle of M&Ms that Bruce made, or the triangle signs with his hands that Tom made on Frameshift Live had something to do with Guardians? That idea seemed to go out the window with the realisation it was wing missions they meant, doing wing missions to get good war progress, but I did still wonder if there could be that double meaning, and now the possibility of Guardian involvement is back on again with this latest encounter. Remember that everything we know about the Thargoids and the Guardians has come from other people, INRA reports or through translation software given to us by Ramtar, so it can be changed at any time using the unreliable narrator. Now, I make no assumptions about people's knowledge or playing skill in my videos. I try to keep things generic, so if you already know what the unreliable narrator is, please don't feel patronised. If you don't, what it means is if you have some big plot point or big fact reported by a character in a story, you can always say later that the character was lying or simply mistaken or had an agenda, so they only gave you part of the story, or they only knew part of the story, or they made a false judgment because they didn't have all the facts, or the real story got censored and this was the cover story they were ordered to put out instead, or for any other reason. You can, as a writer, decide that something was incorrect about some or all of anything said by any character. Maybe INRA didn't want anyone to understand the Thargoids except them, so they made up this story about hives, queens and drones. Maybe Ramtar's translation software hit a glitch, or missed some vital detail that would change how we look at what we know. It can all be retconned any time they like. Now that doesn't mean I think it has, but it's worth keeping in mind if at any point old lore appears to get rewritten. And it's also the reason why when people insist that this part or that part of the lore is unquestionable, my response is, are you sure about that? Because at the end of the day, beyond what we discover for ourselves, we've only ever got someone else's word for anything. Thanks for watching.